There's something profoundly haunting about the fears we carry from childhood, those whispers in the dark, the shadows that stretch a little too long, the quiet sound of a creaking floorboard that felt like a monster creeping closer. When we were small, the world was bigger, and so were the things that frightened us. The closet door that never stayed shut, the old doll that seemed to move when no one was looking, the cold silence that followed after calling out for a parent who didn't answer right away. Those moments planted something inside us, a trembling awareness that the world is not always kind, not always safe. But those childhood horrors, they taught us. Every shiver, every nightmare, every heartbeat racing beneath a blanket of fear became a lesson, not in weakness, but in awakening. Tonight, we're stepping into that place again, the fragile space between innocence and terror. 3 disturbing true childhood horror stories that may chill your bones, but also reveal something deeper about the human spirit, about courage, hope, and the way light fights through even the darkest corners of memory. It begins with fear. Pure, unfiltered fear, the kind only a child can feel. But, as we listen, as we remember, we'll see how fear can become a teacher. Evan was 9 years old when the knocking started. Every night, 3 slow knocks on his bedroom wall. He'd lie there, eyes wide open, the blanket clutched tightly under his chin. His parents told him it was just the house settling, that he was imagining things. But Evan knew the rhythm was too deliberate, too human. One night, when the rain came pouring down and thunder rolled across the sky, he decided to stay awake. He wanted to see it for himself. He wanted to know. The clock read to 14 a.m. The first knock came deep and hollow. Then the second, then the third. His heart pounded so loud, it almost drowned them out. His lips trembled, but he whispered into the darkness, "I'm not afraid of you." And for the first time, the knocking stopped. The silence that followed was heavier than the fear had ever been. Weeks later, when his father decided to check the wall, they found the remains of a raccoon, its bones wedged between the boards, claws still stretched toward the boy's bed. But the real story wasn't in what they found, it was in what Evan learned. Fear had shaped him. It didn't destroy him, it prepared him. Years later, he became a firefighter, running into burning buildings when others ran out. He said, "Every time I walk into the smoke, I hear those knocks, and I remember that fear only wins if I let it." Fear is not our enemy. It's a signal, a guide, a reminder of what matters most. It tells us when to pay attention, when to fight, when to stand our ground. It's the first step toward courage. And courage is not the absence of fear, it's walking forward even when you are terrified. In childhood, fear feels endless. Every creak of the house feels like a warning. Every shadow seems alive. But the truth is, that's where bravery begins. The monsters under our beds are just the training ground for the monsters life throws at us later. Every nightmare survived becomes armor. Every scream swallowed becomes strength. Fear doesn't end when we grow up, it just changes shape. But so do we. And then there's trust. The softest, most fragile thing a child possesses. We give it freely, without question, because the world has not yet taught us betrayal. But horror often begins when that trust is broken. Sophie was 10 when the little gifts began appearing. A carved wooden bird, a paper crane, a polished marble, all left neatly on her porch every morning. She thought it was a secret friend from school. Someone kind. Someone who understood her loneliness. Her parents found it endearing, until the night they saw a man's shadow in the yard. He was from their neighborhood. Quiet, polite, the kind of man people waved to without thinking. But in his attic, the police found hundreds of photos of children, of Sophie playing in the yard, of her walking home from school. He told them he just liked to watch. The damage was done. The world Sophie once saw as warm and full of wonder turned cold and uncertain. She learned that trust was not something to hand out like candy. It was sacred, something to guard and protect. But in that pain, she also found power. She learned to listen to her instincts, that small voice that warns when something feels wrong. Trust is a gift, and when we learn to give it wisely, it becomes strength. Sophie grew up to become a counselor for children, teaching them about boundaries, awareness, and the strength that comes from saying no. The same fear that once silenced her became her greatest message. Not everyone deserves your trust, but that doesn't mean you should stop believing in good people. It just means you learn to see clearly who they really are. Sometimes, The most horrifying things aren't ghosts or monsters, they are the people who wear the mask of kindness. But the lesson is not to close off from the world. It's to open our eyes wider. Because awareness, not fear, is what keeps us safe. And then there's the past. Those stories that cling to us, whispering across time, reminding us of what we've left unresolved. Some fears don't die until we face them. Miguel used to dream of a woman crying under a bridge. Every night, her wails would fill the room. "Ay, mis hijos?" She'd sob. His grandmother told him it was La Llorona, the weeping woman, cursed to wander the earth after losing her children. Miguel prayed every night, but the dreams didn't stop. When his family moved away, they faded until years later, when he returned as an adult and saw the same bridge being demolished. That night, the dream came back, the same woman, the same cries. But this time, Miguel lit a candle by the river. He whispered, "Go home." When he awoke, the dream was gone. Sometimes, the only way to silence a ghost is to confront it, not with anger, but with understanding. The things that haunt us, trauma, guilt, grief, only lose their power when we stop running. Miguel realized that the crying woman wasn't just folklore. She was the part of him that still mourned his childhood, still feared what he didn't understand. By facing her, he freed both of them. Fear teaches. Betrayal awakens. Confrontation heals. There was Amira, a little girl who vanished in the woods for 2 days. When rescuers found her, cold but alive, she told them the trees talked to me. They told me to walk toward the light. People called it imagination, but Amira knew what she felt. The forest wasn't her enemy. It was alive, guiding her, holding her. Children see hope where adults see only danger. Innocence isn't weakness, it's faith in disguise. That pure, untouched belief can pull us through storms that logic can't. Sometimes, it takes a child's heart to remind us that the world, though cruel, still holds magic if we dare to believe it does. But horror often hides behind smiles. Evil doesn't always wear a mask. It sometimes wears a friendly face, the kind that waves from next door. Liam's babysitter was one of those faces. She baked cookies, read bedtime stories, and prayed before meals. Years later, when Liam was grown, police discovered she'd been part of a local cult that performed strange rituals beneath her basement. The realization shattered him. How could something so kind harbor such darkness? But it taught him something most never learn, that intuition is sacred. The little voice that whispers, "Something is not right," is your soul trying to protect you. It doesn't shout, it murmurs, and if you listen, it will save you. Evil rarely announces itself. It smiles. It waits. But even then there's hope, because awareness is our greatest defense. Once you see the mask for what it is, it can never fool you again. In the ruins of a Wartharan city, a little girl named Hannah once painted butterflies on broken walls. She had no toys, no books, no safe home, only color, paint, and hope. She said, "If I can make something beautiful here, maybe it will stop being scary." Years later, Hannah became an artist, restoring destroyed buildings with murals of peace and color. The same shadows that terrified her became her canvas. That's the beauty of horror. When we face it, it can transform into art, compassion, or purpose. Every child who survives something dark carries that power, the ability to create light from pain. Caleb lost his mother young. To cope, he invented an imaginary friend, a boy named Eli. They played together, talked for hours, laughed. But over time, strange things began to happen. Doors opening on their own, drawings changing overnight. Caleb began to feel Eli wasn't just imaginary anymore. His father finally helped him let go by writing letters to his mother, burning them in the fireplace, and saying goodbye to Eli. The haunting stopped, because sometimes our imagination holds on to grief so tightly it becomes its own ghost. But creation isn't evil, it's powerful. It can heal or it can haunt, depending on how we use it. Caleb learned that the stories we tell ourselves shape our reality. When we write from pain, we must also write the ending, the one where we heal. And then there's Nora. She saw something she could never forget at a childhood sleepover. She buried it deep, pretending it never happened. But years later, she returned to that same house, now abandoned, and carved one word into the door: survivor. That was her closure. Not forgetting, but claiming her strength. Every scar tells a story of endurance. When we look back on the horrors of our childhood, real or imagined, what we find is not weakness, but proof. Proof that we made it. Proof that the darkness didn't win. Every tremble, every sleepless night, every moment we thought we couldn't go on, they all forged us into something unbreakable. Childhood horror stories remind us that light and dark exist side by side in all of us. They teach us that fear, though painful, can become wisdom, that innocence, once wounded, can still bloom into resilience, and that no matter how deep the night gets, dawn always finds its way. So if you've ever faced your own shadows, if you've ever felt that childhood fears still echo inside you, let this be your reminder. You are not defined by what scared you. You are defined by the fact that you survived it. May you find courage in every fear, strength in every scar, and hope in every shadow. May your nights be quiet, your dreams gentle, and your heart brave enough to face whatever knocks at your walls. Soft music fades, a candle flickers. May peace find you where fear once lived. May the monsters of your past rest, and may light guard your sleep tonight. Amen.